You can always be a part of the show. Hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SEC this morning. Joe's in here, goes, with all the coaches saying why they should be number one, except LSU saying anyone, anywhere. Do you think this helped them decide how to make them number one?
I don't think it helped them decide to make them number one, but I do like that strategy.
Oh, I love the mentality. Love it.
Think about this, though. Ryan Day was really out there lobbying for that number one spot, saying why they I understand, speaking on behalf of your team.
Ryan Day, the Ohio State head coach.
But don't you think it makes you feel a little bit like, hey, we want to be number one because we don't want to play that team in orange? I like what Coach O was saying. Hey, we don't care who it is. We're going to have to play any of these teams to win it all anyway. It doesn't matter to us. I think that instills more confidence than the other way.
Joe Burrow said, I'll play in Canada. I'll play in a gravel pit. It doesn't matter. Coach Ed Ogeron was asked about that on the SEC Now set.
It don't matter who they tell us to play, where they tell us to play, we coming.
Let's go. All right.
Let's go.
Coach O.
It's that attitude, and you're right. And I think they don't care. I think LSU fans cared. They wanted to be the number one seed. It's just a pride to be number one. But also, there's no doubt, right, that when you look at Football Power Index, facing Clemson is a different animal than facing Oklahoma. Is Oklahoma great? Absolutely. Is it a little bit easier than a really complete, undefeated Clemson team? There's no doubt.
But I really feel like Coach O knows that he's got a pretty good team that can match up against anybody. And if you're going to win it all, like they've done through the 13 games of the season so far, you got to show up and win that next one on your schedule.
This guy shows up every week on the show. He's Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart. TB, what did you take from LSU 37, Georgia 10?
Guys, it was evident at halftime the way this game was going to go. Georgia couldn't generate anything offensively. Jake Fromm kept missing open receivers. Open receivers kept dropping the ball. DeAndre Swift wasn't what he normally is when he's healthy. And LSU was playing with a supreme amount of confidence. And I was telling people at halftime, this is going to get ugly. And it did.
You kind of got the sense, I mentioned it earlier, you felt like the dam was going to break. The Georgia defense did a nice job of keeping them in the ballgame into the third quarter. But the lack of any sort of offense just never let you feel like Georgia was going to be a factor in that ballgame in the second half. With that being said, this is clearly an offense that's behind the times at this point. We've talked about Jake Fromm's regression this year. What do you think we can expect in terms of moving forward? Coaching moves. We're going to lose Sam Pittman on the offensive line, obviously, at Georgia. What happens with this coaching staff in the offseason?
Well, Kirby only hinted that changes were going to be made, and I got to believe they're going to bring some new blood in to sort of figure out what they can do offensively. Because look, these young receivers are going to grow up, and when they do, they're going to be good. And Georgia's got depth at running back, and they've got the good offensive line, but they've got to help the quarterback be more productive. He just there's no nice way to say it. Jake didn't. I know that Kirby Smart tried to deflect the criticism off of Jake, but he passed under 50% his last 5 games. There's no getting around that. So they've got to do something offensively and jazz things up. One columnist here suggested Mike Bobo. Looks like Mike Bobo may be going to South Carolina.
Well, and it's interesting because those are some of the rumor mills that we're hearing about. Mike Bobo, of course, no longer the head coach over at Colorado State, was an OC at Georgia for a while, and now would he be there? But it appears that Will Muschamp has zeroed in. We'll get some more reports on that a little bit later. Tony, LSU, now the number 1 seed going against Oklahoma in Atlanta. Your first thoughts on that matchup?
Oh, I think it's going to be a great matchup because Oklahoma's defense is better than you think it is. They've got better, and offensively they are really, really hard to stop. Now, if you make me pick the game today, I'm picking LSU because I just think LSU has got it all. There are no weaknesses in that team. But when you match up Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, I really hope Jalen gets a trip to New York. I don't know if they've announced it yet or not, but I hope he does. And that would be really, really cool. Playing in Atlanta, where LSU just won a championship and where Jalen Hurts had one of the high moments of his career was in that building last year when he led Alabama to an SEC championship. So a lot of great storylines, and that's what it's all about.
Tony, you were talking about making that trip to New York City. Of course, that's the Downtown Athletic Club for the Heisman. Joe Burrow's winning it. There's already billboards in Baton Rouge saying it's Heisman. There's no doubt. Do you have a Heisman vote? And even if you didn't, who else should be there watching Burrow get that trophy?
Well, I gave up my Heisman vote several years ago, but if I did have one, obviously Burrow is first. And I think you have to look at – I just think Chase Young is just an unbelievable football player. I think you'd have to include him. And based on what I saw Saturday night, I think I'd have to find a spot for Jonathan Taylor in there somewhere. Man, he's really good. So, and Jalen Hurts certainly deserves to be there. So I wish this was a year they could bring five. But I think there are five guys that deserve to go.
Tony, one of the other big storylines we've been talking about this morning, the 3 coaching vacancies have been hired, although Missouri hasn't formally announced Eli Drinkwitz as their next coach. I think we know that's going to be the case. Which team got it right as you look at these 3 guys that are going to be hired and the fits at those respective schools?
Ole Miss got it right. Ole Miss got it right, and I just think that adds so much juice. One of the things you heard from the Ole Miss people, because I didn't think they should have fired Matt Luke. I thought they should have given him one more year. But what I hear from us is there's no juice, there's no excitement, there's no unpredictability. And they said, well, you got it all now, Bubba. Because coming in, think about that, coming into the same division with Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher, Gus Malzahn, Coach O, welcome to the party, Lane Kiffin.
How much success can you expect in year one? You've got John Rice Plumlee, you have Snoop Connor, you have Jerrion Ely. Assuming that there's not a mass exodus in the transfer portal, I can't imagine Lane Kiffin coming to town. Offensive players are going to be like, yeah, that's just not for me, right? I mean, what is realistic for 2020 Ole Miss football?
Well, yeah, let's go to Israel to see what Lane does. Does he go with the running of John Rice Plumlee? Does he go with the passing of Matt Corral? I mean, they threw it well at the end when they were trying to come back and beat Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. And it really depends on what Lane wants to do. Does he want to use them both? Have elements of them both? The line of scrimmage, the defense got better. Does Mike McIntyre come back? Because I know he's going to be asked to come back, I think. Does he come back? So realistically, you look at that roster and who they're playing against, maybe 5 wins, maybe something like that.
I want to ask you about Arkansas. I imagine you know Sam Pittman pretty well. This is a guy that's been around the conference for a long time, most recently as the offensive line coach in Athens there. He hadn't been a head coach before. In fact, he's never been a coordinator, but yet he gets this job because of his ties to Arkansas, a previous stint there, and the fact that he's from that proximity to the country. What do you make of that hire? Is that the right guy, or is this a situation where Arkansas was going down the list, getting turned down, and had to find somebody they knew would take the job?
Nobody told me this. I'm just drawing my own conclusion. I believe after hitting on a bunch of people and misses, they said, you know what? We got to go find our own Ed Orgeron. There's another Ed Orgeron out there somewhere, and we got to find him. And they settled on Sam Pittman, who is not only a great, great offensive line coach, he is a relentless recruiter. And in today's game, the head coach has got to be the face of your recruiting apparatus, and that's what he'll be able to do. I remember he was with Bielema before he came to Georgia.
Sure.
And so he knows the turf, and they had a long way to go from a roster standpoint. They've only lost 19 straight SEC games. That's all he's facing. Mm-hmm. But I think for Arkansas, I think that was a great pick.
Here's the deal. I think it's a great pick because I think Sam Pittman wants to be there, and I think that's important, TB. Like Ed Orgeron wanted to be in Baton Rouge, but it's going to take some time, and I think patience is going to be the key because they're not going to blow out a coach within 1 or 2 years. And if there is one position group that's tough to just all of a sudden snap your fingers and get better, that's where he excels in recruiting. It's offensive line, correct?
That's correct. There's a bunch of 5-star offensive linemen at Georgia, and he signed just about all of them.
Hey, Tony, we focused on the announcement of LSU being the number 1 seed and the fact that they'll play Oklahoma in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. But there's 8 other bowl games that SEC teams will participate in, and one of the hardest things about this time of year is figuring out which teams are going to be dialed in. In fact, which players are going to play from these respective rosters. Which game that you look at either intrigues you the most, or is the sense of most desperation for one of these teams?
Well, again, you start looking for storylines, and Alabama versus Michigan is a storyline every time it's ever played. 2 coaches who are in interesting times in their lives, and how does Nick Saban come back and get this team back on an even keel? What a Jim Harbaugh. Who is going to be excited to play? I think that is one. I'm anxious to see how Auburn plays against Minnesota, coming off a great win over Alabama, and Minnesota, get back on New Year's Day. How does that game sort of shake out? And I'm just curious here, sitting in this part of the world, if Georgia is at all interested in playing Baylor in the Sugar Bowl. I don't know. I really don't.
No, it's a great question. Not having Sam Pittman there, maybe going through some changes on the offensive staff. DeAndre Swift may not play. And people keep asking us, TB and Chris, on Twitter, what do you think the bowl record is going to be for the SEC in the games? Frankly, we don't know until we get at least a little bit closer to figure out who the hell says, I want to play.
I like the matchups, though, this year. I think sometimes the SEC suffered from having bad matchups where they get exposed to higher seeded teams within the conferences they're playing against. FPI has the SEC favored in every single one of the 9 games that they'll participate in, so I think it should bode well. My last question for you, TB, though, you're a historian of college football in general, but specific in this conference. The Sugar Bowl, which has always been the pinnacle for everybody in this league to try to get to New Orleans, now almost becomes a consolation prize because more times than not, it's the loser in the SEC championship game. It's the team that had a chance to get into the college football playoffs and now finds himself on the outside looking in. Do they need to retool this to maybe give the folks in the Sugar Bowl an opportunity to select a team that may – because I have to imagine that Florida might be a team that might be more appreciative of going to that game, that might be able to have a better group of attendees in the game too. You think they'll ever tweak that rule and give the Sugar Bowl folks some latitude?
CD, I don't think they will, and here's why. When the college football playoff came to be, they didn't make a big deal out of it, but quietly behind the scenes, the bowls were told, hey, fellas, you host the bowl. That's it. Okay, we pick the teams. We put the teams where we think they should go based on their season. And so, would the Sugar Bowl love to have more input in the decision? You bet they would. Are they going to get it? Nope. This is strictly up to the commissioners and to the conference.
And that's why he is Mr. College Football. TB, always great insight, and we'll see you come playoff time, my friend.
Okay, man. Take care.
Thank you,
There
man.
it is, Tony Barnhart joining us. As always, you can hit us up on Twitter, the governor, at Chris Doring, myself, at Peter Burns, ESPN. Your tweets and a rapid-fire water cooler coming up next here on SEC This Morning.